Hi, this is Julie Beeling with Beneath Sheep's Clothing, and I'm excited to be interviewing Cari Bartholomew today. And there's just something that's come up here in Utah that's really crucial. It's not just about the Utah State School Board. It's not just about one person on the Utah State School Board. It's actually kind of about the fate of Utah's children. And Utah is a state that's known for caring about children. And so that's why I wanted to interview Cari. And then we're going to actually have a very special guest pop in for a bit as well, Dr. James Lindsay, to weigh in, because this is a really crucial issue and of this struggle session that Natalie Cline of the Utah State School Board is being put through. So Cari, kind of go ahead and just give us, well, actually, I didn't do a very good job of introducing you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself for those who aren't familiar with you?
Sure. For this purpose, you probably want to interview me because I am running for the state school board. And so I am watching what's happening in real time. And um, Natalie's a friend of mine, and it really weighs into my heart what's happening to her, and also the decisions that the rest of us make um, in regards to how we run our race, and how we what decisions we make and what best will protect our kids.
Definitely. And also, Cari is a mother, an educator, and someone who's been very involved here in Utah with educating people about, I guess, what critical race theory really is. And so just for other people who might not be familiar. So let's just get like just kind of the background information here. Who is Natalie Cline? What she's accused of doing something really terrible. What was she accused of? And is the reaction to what happened really warranted? So let's start with that.
Sure. Natalie is a state school board member. Some people call her the Marjorie Taylor Greene of Utah. She is she is a little different. So she stands for what she believes to be truth, and what is arguably and justifiably true. And sometimes that puts a kind of a mirror, kind of a reflection up against people that they don't like. Because if you are compromising to things that you know aren't true and one person isn't, that does make you the person who people are going to turn against. And that's kind of where she's at. So what happened was she was sent, and I hate to speak for her, but from what I understand, she was sent an image that many other people were sent of a girls' basketball team. And one of the
It was
people
at
on the
high
basket,
school, the high school, girls'
it's a
high
high
school
school. It's
here
a
in
high
Utah.
school. So this is minors. This is related to minors, K-12 education. And so she responded by putting the picture up. She got this late at night. She responded by putting the picture up that says girls basketball. And that was it. This picture was taken from another site, from the high school site. This was their basketball promo picture. And unfortunately, people decided to start making comments. And the comments that they made were not very nice. The picture was the, it did turn out to be a girl. Um, she's very, very strong. And so it put into question, with a lot of what's going on in Utah, a lot of bills that are being passed. We were having a lot of success with passing bills. We're in legislative session now. And so we were having a lot of success with getting bills passed, like some people call it the anti-DEI bill, but it's actually called the Equal Opportunities Initiative. So, and that upset a lot of people who they do not apply reason or logic, but they come with a lot of emotions, and they emote and tend to get what they want through doing that. So those same people have now put their energies towards Natalie because,
Yeah, and
go
I
ahead.
just want to make a comment really quick for I mean, for anyone who's paying attention to any of this here in Utah, which I live in southern Utah. Cari, you're up in Payson. this diversity, equity, and inclusion that Utah is working on rooting out. Those are three things that sound really nice on paper, but one of the things that is become very clear to me as I've done research and for my book and my documentary Beneath Sheep's Clothing, it's actually communism. And
Yes,
communism always takes things that sound really, really nice. In the Soviet Union, it was bread and land for the peasants. Instead, they got massacred and
yeah.
imprisoned. They got they got the opposite of the bread and land. They got the bread taken from them. They got their land taken from them. They got sent to the gulag, a lot of them, if they
Right.
were allowed to live. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. Equity is explicitly communist. Diversity and inclusion actually mean the opposite of what they sound like.
Absolutely.
So this is what the good, we're not probably going to convince anyone on the left here with this conversation. So that's kind of not our target audience. We're looking
Sure.
more to talk to fellow conservatives. We have to understand the Marxist playbook, the Maoist playbook, as James Lindsay will be popping on. We're very grateful that he agreed to help us out here because he cares about our country and he knows Utah is a big player. If Utah falls, that's not going to be good for America, even though he doesn't live here in Utah. But we have to understand how Marxism operates. And so this is why conservative activists and conservative legislators here in Utah have been working to get the diversity, equity, and inclusion out because it's communism.
Right.
So that's that background. Anyways, I'll let you continue now.
No, can I explain that? That
Sure.
diversity, you might not be able to tell because of my lighting, and I'm considered somewhat fair, but I'm biracial. I'm half black, half white. My family on my father's side is from Haiti. And so we don't count as being diverse. So
Why
there's
is that?
many,
Why
there's
is it that you don't count as being diverse?
because my viewpoint is different. Because I don't believe that we should be dividing people by their race, because I'm not interested in reparations that never turn out to be anything other than a ploy. I'm not interested in those things. I'm interested in unity. I'm interested in people coming together. I'm interested in celebrating the good things about our country, working on the things that aren't so great, but not pretending and making up new things for whatever causes. So, because of those things, the diversity, including in Utah and including in this group that's attacking Natalie, these groups are vicious towards minorities who do not play their game. Vicious. We are attacked. We are attacked. Our children are doxxed. My son was doxxed 3 weeks ago by this group. But
Equality Utah?
yes, so specifically by their leader. She's in the pictures. I don't want to say her name and give her, anything. But and people will absolutely lie. And we never stand up for our own. I actually put this out not because of me, but because of someone else that I'd seen that was speaking. And when they were speaking, it was hard for them. They're not a person who normally gets up and puts themselves out there. And this person gets out there and speaks, and he is completely lambasted just because he has the wrong point of view, i.e., he's not a Marxist. And we pretend that Marxism is a bad word. But I will tell you, just a couple of weeks ago, I was at a donuts and a politicians meeting, breakfast meeting, and one person who was up said that our problem is Marxism. Our problem is that our children, that we are all being divided in a very political way. And I don't mean Democrats and Republicans, I mean every single point of intersectionality. If you don't understand what intersectionality is, you take everything that's different about you, and all of those different things put you in different boxes. And then those boxes decide how privileged or not how privileged you are. And that's literally what they're doing. And that is what they're doing in our schools. And that's what Natalie says no to. And because she says no, she is a huge target.
Yeah.
Other people will say, oh, I don't like it. Oh, it makes me uncomfortable. Oh, it's wrong. But they won't just flat out go, no, we're not doing this. So she posted that at about midnight, I think is what she said. So she posts this at midnight, and by, her day goes on the next morning, she checks her email, or she checks her social media at noon, and it has blown up because Equality Utah, again, Equality Utah, remember that name and go look at the joy and love that they have for others. So so she takes these they take these pictures and they post them everywhere. And then they start saying that the girl is in great danger. The family comes out and makes a public statement. The family happens to be the father he's a celebrity. And this is very much blown up. I I feel a lot of pain for the girl because no young woman wants to be told she looks like a man. Now, to be clear, Natalie did not say that, but her followers did.
Yeah. Um, so you had mentioned to me that there were some really interesting things going on where it looks like almost like it might have possibly been a setup um to give them an excuse to go after Natalie Cline. Um, let's really quick. Why? What if the leftist forces, I guess we can call them here in Utah, succeed in removing Natalie Cline from the state school board? What would that do for their cause? Why would they want to go all in to remove her from her position as they're trying now, based on this incident?
Right. Well, it will replace her seat with somebody approved by the NEA,
The national.
National Education Association. Yes.
And what
Um,
about the NEA do conservatives need to understand?
they openly say that our schools are no longer a place for academics, but a place for activism. There are numerous, all you have to do is
Like
go to
that.
the,
They want them to be places for activism.
yes, the NEA's very opening pages are fists up in the air. It's the Marxist fist everywhere and throughout their pages. You know what I do. I go through curriculum and I expose it. I have a book right in front of me because I'll be doing a podcast tomorrow. Um, and it is utterly about teaching our kids to be activists. And I'm not going to say that the person who's coming
Leftist activists.
Yes, yes, exactly. I hate the term activist because I generally think of activists as people who want to dismantle and destroy. And even though I call a lot of what I do dismantling ethnic studies, I do want that destroyed, but I don't want my country destroyed. I don't want my neighbors hating each other. Um, I believe Robin DiAngelo had put it that there was no place for biracial families. I am a biracial family. I was born biracial. I'm married to a Caucasian man. It's never been an issue for us. The fact that some school believes that they can make it that, or that they should make it that way, that it's their responsibility because they have their ways of knowing. And that's the thing. They want to put people in office who have their ways of knowing or their insight, which is, you want to talk racism? You want to ask if Utah is racist? Go look at what the leftists post and what they do already. And we're going to put more of that into our schools. We had one school board member who openly said he would not put his name to saying that Black and brown teachers could not take tests. And he says, we've already done this to our students. We're not going to do it to new teachers. I will not say that a Black or brown person is not capable of learning. Literally, these are the kind of conversations that are being had.
They're saying
And
that
you can
teacher who happens to be Black or of some ethnicity other than white, that means they can't
they
take
shouldn't take tests to become teachers
because it's racist.
because
You can take a test because they're so stupid that they can't take a test. Yeah, that's incredibly insulting.
it is. It's very hard. And I have a lot of admiration for that member who decided to say that he would not do that. And these are available. So, there will be people who will say we're full of misinformation. All you have to do is get on the state school board sites and you can listen to their old meetings and you can find these conversations. Natalie and her cohort, Monica, put a lot of this stuff up on their channel.
Mhm,
And so it's really hard to argue with actual evidence.
mhm.
So, Natalie stands up hard against um, gender ideology in our schools, probably more so than race stuff. But gender ideology, she stands up hard against it, and they don't like that.
Right. Well, because she understands that it's Marxist. Again, to separate people. So just a little primer on Marxism. It's oppressed versus oppressor. You locate a group of people that are oppressed or who can be made to feel oppressed, tell them they're oppressed, make them really mad that they're oppressed, stoke their grievance, point the finger at the oppressor group. For critical race theory, the oppressor group is whiteness, white supremacy, whatever. For gender Marxism, it's people who are cis normative, where males are males, females are females. For queer Marxism, it's heteronormativity, where it's normal to be heterosexual. Those things have to be, those are systems of power that have to be dismantled and torn down in order for an equitable society. And this whole issue with allowing males to play in girls' sports is part of dismantling this cis normativity that these Marxist activists want to dismantle. And so that's why who even came up with letting biological males play in girls' sports, it was these queer Marxist activists. And so, yeah, Natalie Cline been fighting against this and exposing it. And most people would agree that they wouldn't want their high school girl, their middle school aged girl, or even college aged daughter, playing in sports against biological males. It's not fair and it's not safe. And so this picture that was posted of this basketball team, one of the girls looked a little bit more stockier and a little more masculine, apparently. And so that's where this all came from. And but what do we do now? How do we move forward from here? Because I know, Cari, you and I talked on Saturday, and you were saying, look, there's people who are saying that those of us running for state school board should not support Natalie publicly. There's people saying that we should just let her take the fall and then we'll just try to get elected. And that doesn't seem right. What do we do here? And at this point, this is where I want to bring in, let me just email him real quick, James Lindsay, to weigh in on what a Maoist struggle session is and what is going on with Natalie, and let him share that. And then Cari, you and I will then finish up the conversation after we have James on, but let me just email him really quick. And then if you have anything else to say right now, feel free.
No, it's really hard because I'm watching good people be divided.
Yeah.
And that's, you've said this before, that there's always a little bit of truth married to the lie. And so watching really wonderful people who do a lot of good work throughout the state turn, or, you know, in my opinion, use this situation as a scapegoat. Nothing else can be passed because she made this mistake. If this were if this were a trap, which I tend to lean into the thought that this is a trap, but to pretend that we don't have other people who've made those mistakes, right? It's already been pointed out that our governor made a huge mistake in publicly and was never held accountable for that.
Right. Exactly. I see James is on now. Welcome, James. Can you hear us? There you
I
are.
can.
Awesome.
Hello.
We just broke
Hello.
down what happened with Natalie Cline with that incident and some of the dynamics with Marxism. And we'd love for you to kind of share, what a struggle session is, how what Natalie is going through now is a struggle session and what we need to do about it. And we're very grateful for your time.
Yeah, well, I mean, a struggle session is something we all need to understand and that we have to realize have become a kind of standard part of our experience if we try to fight against woke agenda or DEI or whatever else. They were a tool that was developed in China specifically. Mao Zedong used them in China as part of his broader program of what got called thought reform, which we might consider brainwashing, but the literal translation that the literal Chinese, if we translated it directly for thought reform, is ideological remolding or ideological transformation. And so the idea is to cause the target of the struggle session environment and the ideological remolding or thought reform environment to transform their ideological view of the world. In other words, it's to bring them, as Mao had it, to see from the people's perspective. So it's really, I mean, the only way to really describe it is that it's a tool of psychological and social torture meant to get somebody to transform their belief system. And the proximate goal of a struggle session is to pressure an individual, the target of the struggle session, to pressure the target into confessing to a crime that only exists on the contrived terms of another ideological worldview. So a very common experience of this that people would have now is that they are maybe in DEI training or anti-racist or unconscious bias training, and they get accused of some kind of subtle complicity in racism, and then they're told that they're a racist. And the thing is that you don't know how you're a racist. It doesn't make sense. It's offensive to you. You're having maybe even an emotional reaction. Maybe you laugh. Maybe you think it's very serious and you get very upset. Maybe you're just confused. And the goal is to get you to not just confess that you did a racism, but to go further and get you to understand why it's a racist thing from the contrived perspective of the anti-racist or unconscious bias training. In other words, it's to get you to accept complicity in systemic racism or get you to accept the concept of unconscious bias and start to think that that's legitimate and real and the right way to see the world. So it is a tool by which you single out a person, you get their entire social environment or the majority of their social environment around them to all turn on them at the same time so they feel very isolated. You want even their friends to start treating them like just say whatever, apologize, do whatever you have to do to make it go away. And you can get that by extending the process by association. Like if you were the target, somebody might go after me now and say, well, James Lindsay is friends with Julie and she's a big problem, so that means he's just supporting a big problem, blah blah blah. And so the goal of that is to get me to come and call you and say, hey Julie, why don't you change just say whatever, they're coming after me now. And so it's to create a psychological and social environment where you are supposed to confess that you did some terrible thing, but it's only a terrible thing from the perspective of the worldview they want you to adopt. Mao called this learning to see from the people's standpoint. And so you have to be ideologically remolded to see from the people's standpoint. We might call it an anti-racist perspective or through an equity lens or something like that today. And the most important part is that you don't recognize, to use Maoist language again, you don't recognize your crime until you've been brainwashed to understand why what you did is a crime on those terms. So that's all still really abstract. Let's kind of just look at Natalie's case. Natalie's case is kind of an interesting one because she genuinely made a mistake. Honest mistakes happen. Okay, so somebody makes an honest mistake. We should expect that they make amends. What's happening here is not asking Natalie to make amends for an honest mistake, which she did voluntarily from the beginning as soon as she realized that it occurred. What's happening with Natalie is very different. She's being pressured to resign. She's being told that she cyberbullied, that she harmed a child, that she abused her position to harm a child. These things are the things they're trying to get her to confess to, that she did some gratuitously harmful act that can't possibly be atoned for through an act of individual personal apology to the person in question or her family. So it's got to be blown out into this absolutely egregious act. And the trick is to get as many people as possible through social pressure to jump in. So what you see is like the Granite District contrived a gigantic meeting to denounce her. And that's actually the essence of the struggle session is it's denounce the target, denounce everybody associated with the target. And so then what happens is now there's this big thing happening and there's media getting involved and they're all denouncing the target. They're not looking for truth. They're looking to denounce Natalie to get her to confess that she did something far more egregious than make an honest mistake that she could apologize for. And then people in the immediate vicinity of the struggle session start piling in as well and saying, well, you know, what she did really was bad. It really was part of her position. She's really abused her position, and it's really just not okay. And it's embarrassed the state of Utah. So now everybody in Utah is now pulled into this. Oh, it's embarrassing to this. I'm from Utah. I'm embarrassed because this woman's on our state school board. And more denunciation and more denunciation, more denunciation is coming from every angle to where she can't possibly feel like she's able to atone for what happened or to make amends for what happened outside of accepting the accusation against her, which necessarily with her accepting that accusation entails that she's going to resign, that she abused her position, that she is a very bad person and that she should be ashamed and shouldn't be involved. And in fact, the next step is with that there's a big problem here overall. So the next step, if she were to cave in, is going to be, well, there's obviously a big problem. So now we have to change the policies. Maybe the governor needs to appoint school board members instead of having elections. Maybe we're going to take more of people's rights away. We've got to make sure this never happens again. And she becomes a sacrificial lamb that justifies the change. So it's very important that she does not give in. If they remove her, they remove her. If she's forced out, she's forced out. But it's very important that she doesn't give in. It's also very important that the people who are around her, who are her friends and are her allies, even people who are relatively distant allies. I understand the Republican Party there in Utah is not treating her very well, which is utterly shameful because the people who are more distant, they need to be rallying around her. The fact that the governor decided to pile in on this. Now I know that they
Well,
don't
he's not
exactly have
really, yeah, he's not really Republican, but whatever.
they don't have the best relationship either. But I mean, this is to the point where it's now national news is weighing in. It's utterly crucial. The only way to help somebody who's being hit with a struggle session, and I really want to make it clear, it's like the stuff that they do to people in like Guantanamo is physically more abusive, but it's not psychologically more abusive. Robert Lifton described the struggle session environment, which he studied extensively in the 1950s and 1960s when it was happening in China. He described it as perhaps the most sophisticated psychological manipulation tools that were ever developed by humanity. So the amount of pain and psychological injury and social pressure that it puts on the target is overwhelming. There's a reason why people committed suicide in very large numbers in Maoist China when they were subjected to these humiliation rituals, demanding they confess to crimes that don't even exist so that they would accept Maoist, what they called in China, Mao Zedong thought. This is what's happening to Natalie. And it's, I think, imperative that people stop joining in, stop looking for this little like way to, what am I looking for? Like they want to get the pressure off themselves, so they're willing to throw her under the bus, or they think they're being all strategic. Oh, well, I'm running for school board too, and it would look bad in the election if I'm in an alliance with somebody who's in this much trouble. So it's strategically better for me to just distance myself. That's what they want. The goal is to make Natalie feel completely alone, like she committed an unbelievable crime instead of literally made a relatively minor mistake, and to amplify that until she cracks and then use that as a justification, not just to expel her, but to silence other people around her and to change policy that is advantageous to them. It's frustrating to me to watch yet another struggle session erupt and to watch so-called conservatives and Republicans be this blind to what they're participating in or helping or facilitating or even allowing, not standing by one of their own, even against disagreements. I was texting with somebody about this issue yesterday. The left will stand in solidarity with literal murders and child molesters, Natalie Cline made a tiny faux pas that she apologized for, and people are throwing her under the bus, trying to get away from her like she's got leprosy or turned radioactive. Think about that. You wonder why they win. You wonder why they're transforming your states out from underneath you. It's disgusting. She makes a tiny error. And by the way, the error that she made is the bed that the left made. And she pointed that out. Nobody would question whatsoever if a girl on a basketball team was a girl until they started letting boys play on basketball teams, or girls' basketball teams, I should say. This was never a question. There was no reason for her to have doubt in her mind until the leftist policy came in under inclusion and all of this crap we're all supposed to accept. And now Natalie's the one who's not sufficiently inclusive because she made an error consonant with that exact policy. Before that policy, nobody could have possibly made this mistake. And so it's not to excuse that she made her own error, which she did. She should have done her due diligence, whatever. The end. No more. That's it. And she acknowledged that already. So the story is over. This is a non-story. But they've turned it into a gigantic story to struggle her into accepting the inclusion narrative and how harmful and hurtful it is to people's feelings. And that's all getting leveraged for political power by her enemies. And she has many enemies because she's one of the best.
Yeah. But for conservatives here in Utah to be able to stand up to this, we have to be willing to deal with this narcissistic rage that comes from these leftist activists.
Yeah. I encourage them to read about, I mean, literally, just go look up the following terms. If you're a conservative or a Republican who cares about Utah, you need to go look up the following terms. Spend literally no more than 15, 20 minutes. You don't have to do any more than that. This is a very small part of your evening, tonight, tomorrow, over the weekend, this weekend. Go look up the terms narcissistic injury, narcissistic wound, narcissistic rage. Go look them up. See what's happening. The other thing is that this isn't even organic. It's totally astroturfed. Natalie has many political enemies. She made a mistake, and they seized upon it with tremendous amounts of organization to gin up a gigantic controversy in order to try to depose her. So the fact that there are people who don't know what's going on that are just looking at this like, oh my gosh, it's a huge controversy. It's so we have to say something. We have to distance ourselves from her is just. I mean, frankly, at this point, it's just sickening.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to understand these narcissistic tantrums and just, if anyone's ever dealt with a tantruming toddler, you have to walk away and just ignore the tantrum. Cari, did you want to ask James anything? Ask him to elucidate anything?
Yeah, I mean, I am one of the people who was in that place of wondering what I did because the mistake was made, and because my concern is the kids of our state. So my thought was if we lose 4 seats because we're associated, and this is and let me be clear, Natalie is a very good friend of mine, like one of my best friends. And I just thought, my first thought was, well, if she didn't make any mistake, I'd be there 100% standing there. But because the mistake was made, I don't know what to do. Do we give up these seats to these people? Which, who knows? Maybe Utah will wake up and they'll make better decisions. But if not, we're putting in multiple NEA full-on avowed Marxist people into these seats. But I do not want to be considered, I do not want to let a communist movement gain any ground. So first off, how do we fix that? Like, do we come out publicly and all of us say we stand 100%? Or do we just pretend that nothing happened and just not? What do we do there?
No, you've got to come out. You've got to say it. At this point, the noise is already made. You've got the battle is literally public relations. They are trying to sway public opinion. They're not. The truth is out the window. So what happens is you are needing to come out and sway public opinion, but the truth needs to be your sword and shield. So what you need to come out and say, look, Natalie made a mistake. Here's where that mistake came from, the fact that boys already play on girls' basketball teams, and where we've had to pass a law to stop that in Utah, is the context in which that mistake was made. And we stand with her to have made that mistake, and we know that she apologized, and that should have been the end of it. But these activists don't want it to be the end of it. And so we're going to stand with our friend, we're going to stand with our colleague, and we're not going to let activists push her or us around. The thing is if you give in, and you can make that part of a statement too, if you cave in and say, well, to save 4 seats, we're gonna distance ourselves from Natalie, go ahead, get your seats. You say, oh, it's better than letting communists get them. No, it's not. You're compromised. You already compromised. You already gave away the piece of your soul and let the communists have leverage over you. So not only are you, in a sense, well, you are a little better than a communist, but you're not much better. And in some ways, you're worse because you're sitting there pretending like you're something that you're not when you already let them. They've already, in a sense, it's like they put people on leashes. You're already on the leash. And so you're the great conservative, but the next time there's a struggle session, they already know you're going to compromise. You're going to give in. The next person they target, the next mistake, there's going to be a next mistake. People make mistakes all the time. The next one, they're going to take advantage of that. So the best thing to do is to come out all the way. No, we're behind Natalie 100%. She made an honest mistake. She apologized for that mistake. And in any normal circumstance where there isn't a political hit job to destroy her, that would have been the end of it. It would have been between her and that family, maybe a public statement being made. I made a mistake that, was unbecoming. My apologies. Given even a chance to explain herself. I fight very hard on this issue of, trans people in sports. I think it's very important to protect women's sports. I'm perhaps too close to the issue. And so I made a hasty judgment and made an error. And it's a good reminder to do my due diligence in the future. All apologies to the family involved. That was unacceptable. And just move forward. Any other case would have been allowed to move forward. And I think it's important for you to say that there is an activist agenda to destroy this person and anybody associated with her. And we're not going to do that in Utah anymore. They're leveraging Utah values of being kind and turning it into being a doormat. And that's not going to move your state forward. It's going to move your state further and further and further into this kind of subversive leftism, sometimes that has an R by its name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, James. Do you have any other final comments about the situation? I mean, you really laid it out pretty succinctly.
No, I mean, I think this is the essence of the situation. Again, I'm sadly kind of just I keep coming back to it. I'm just disappointed to see this happen again. But I just want to reiterate that last thing I said, because I know why it's happening, is the requirement or the ask of Utahns to be kind is a wonderful and good value and a good ask. That's not what's happening to Natalie. These people are using, polite words, but they are not being kind. They're hitting her with the equivalent of like a psychological death ray of unbelievable proportions, to even where her staunchest friends are questioning whether it's strategic to remain in a relationship with her. Should I throw her under the bus? Should I go into betrayal? They're leveraging that value of kindness against Utahns. It's just like the way that they leverage Christian values against Christians. And it's just absolutely got to stop. It's so important for people to realize what their values are. People say, oh, that's based. This is based. We got to get based. Being based will stop the coming. You're not based if you don't actually know what your values mean in practice. Your values in practice and putting them into practice and keeping them through hard times in practice is what it means to be based, as the phrasing goes. And so now that you're in that test, if you find excuses to fold, or we have to recognize niceness or Christian or whatever the other values they're contorting, if you don't know how to protect your values from being contorted, you're not ready. And it's time to, go home if you're involved in this one side or the other and you're not sure what to do and you felt that way, and look yourself straight in the mirror and ask yourself, if they all descended on me, would I want people standing with me? It's unfair. Would I want people standing with me, or would I hope that my friends, decide to take the expedient route? And, a lot of times, I guarantee you this is happening to Natalie. She's getting people that are making either wishy-washy or outright denouncing her with public statements, and then they're calling her in private and saying, I don't really think that. I guarantee you that's happening. It happens every time. And I haven't talked to Natalie about that, so I'm speculating. Maybe I'm wrong, but it happens virtually every time. So don't let your values get twisted on you against somebody. What's happening right here is not kindness. It's not kindness any more than waterboarding her would be kindness. When you put people through a psychological ringer like that, when you make them the target of not just local activity and local media, but now state level media, the governor's office, national level media, that's not kindness. And they're not representing what happened fairly. They're not trying to say, you know, well, what's the best that, you know, let's look at this the most charitable way we can. They're actually turning it into the most uncharitable interpretation that she used her position to cyberbully a child. That's preposterous. She made a mistake. She apologized for the mistake, and in any other circumstance than a communist mass line, that would have been the end of it. This is an activist agenda to try to take power off of a small error. And everybody in Utah that's touching this issue needs to understand this. And I hope that they have what it takes to stand with somebody who's now in the gaze of the Eye of Sauron, and try to help her protect herself from that and move forward productively.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And unless you have anything else to say, we'll let you sign out, and Cari and I will finish up here.
Yeah, it's just if you have other questions. I mean, I think I've beat the horse to death on this one now.
I mean, what's Utah's fate if we give in to struggle sessions and throw people under the bus who have been strong warriors for sanity?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say is that if you're going to throw strong warriors under the bus because of stuff like this, you get the leadership you deserve. You're going to get craven leadership. You're going to get compromised leadership. You're going to get people who are, maybe they're not communists themselves, but they're cowards and they're on a communist leash. So what you're going to get over the next few years is exactly what China got when Mao unleashed the Red Guard. Our Red Guard is, we do have the problem with the children, the youth being indoctrinated in schools, and we talk about that. Our teachers unions, like we're seeing exactly in this case, are also radicalized, and they're mobilized to attack people and put them through humiliation rituals like struggle sessions. So all you have to do is look at the history of China starting in 1965, early 1966 through 1968, when Mao unleashed the Red Guard. And what happened was Mao had lost power. Just a quick history lesson. Mao had lost power in 1962 because the Great Leap Forward killed 100 million people and they made him step down. Turns out that was bad. And Liu Shaoqi took over power. So he obviously, because Mao is a communist dictator, rather than being, you know, his new country's leader, he became Mao's chief political rival. And so Mao cooked up a plan, unleashed the youth, and they terrorized normal people, parents, grandparents, teachers, university professors. They tore up temples. They destroyed artwork. They destroyed religious icons. They raided people's houses for anything, including letters that they had written that reminded them of the old. They would take people's photographs out of their houses and destroy them and burn them in the yard in front. They'd put dunce caps on people and march them through the streets, sometimes beating them, humiliating them. And this culminated at the end of 1967 with the Red Guard, which were a bunch of teenagers primarily, and sometimes children, rounding up the sitting CCP chairman, Liu Shaoqi, who was now Mao's chief political rival. They dragged him out, and he besought them. He said, remember, he's the chairman. He's the top guy. He's the dictator. And they dragged him out, and they humiliated him. And he said, am I not a citizen? Can I not speak? And they said, no, you are not. You may not speak. And they humiliated him, and they sent him off to die in misery in the countryside. That was the end of 1967. Beginning in 1968, Mao Zedong has now ascended back to the chairman's position, and he comes out and he says, my Red Guard has become too radical and too left and too hard to control, and he unleashed the army on them and had them destroyed. And China never recovered. China has never come back from its cultural revolution. Utah will not come back from a cultural revolution if it's willing to watch its actual genuine leadership get railroaded over a mistake, and to fill all of its positions with craven leadership. Maybe you win against a communist and maybe you lose. But if you capitulate, you gave in. And go read that history of China for those 2 years. Find out how wonderful it was to live, because that's Utah in the future if you're going to give in. And there's not going to be any stopping it.
Oh gosh. Yeah, we're really at a really crucial time here for Utah. And we really need the citizens and the voters to understand these agendas, understand this history. And we have to just do what's right, say what's right, regardless of anything else. Thank you so much, James.
Yep.
We'll let you sign off now, and Cari and I will finish up here. And appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and nice to see you both. Have a good evening.
Yeah, see ya. Hey, Cari, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I can't believe that as somebody who has been fighting this, I almost fell for it. I have my phone just blows up with people asking me my opinion this way or that way, and trying to really wrestle with what is true goodness, what is truly the right thing to do, when everything except for being 100% truthful sounds wrong to me. It just sounds completely wrong. And like I've said before, I talk to so many people who've escaped communism, and it has become, I don't know, like a driving force, right? And to still go, how in the world could I, somebody who knows these things, be tempted for whatever reason? You know, it doesn't matter if it means I don't win an election. It matters that what I always think about is looking at the kid, my child, and the kids I teach, and going, I want them to know that I stood, and the idea that I even sent a message to Natalie saying that that I was going to remain silent, and thinking that being neutral in this was the right thing to do. We're way beyond that. We're in this place where everything that we don't do, as the left will always say, silence is violence. Okay, so they got something right. I mean, really, it's like, to not stand 100% and to let other people say anything that goes wrong is because she messed up is, it feels just wrong. And I want to have empathy for the people who aren't evil, who are just caught up in this, for sure, right? Because there's so many people who don't know, who don't even have the amount of knowledge that we have on this subject. The majority of people don't. But then there's the people who have been looking for a reason out. And I guess my thought is just, Utah has to wake up. You have to stop. I'm sorry, but the person who runs Equality Utah, who is so vicious, shouldn't have a voice. This should not be the look of one Utah. One hateful Utah, one Utah that destroys someone. Like, why would we be okay with anyone being destroyed? We say, oh, we want to do this for the benefit of the girl. The benefit of the girl would have been to stop. The benefit of the girl would have been to hide everything, to erase it, to cleanse it, and to not let it be magnified on national everything everywhere. That would have been the benefit if the girl was really suffering. If she's really struggling, then that should be what happens. But instead, it's a kind of like a worldwide privacy tour. So kind of like, we just want to be left alone. We just want to be left alone, but let's do this and let's do this and let's put this out there. And it does seem like a manipulation. That's what I see.
Very well coordinated for sure. Yeah, I just, want to encourage anyone listening, if you're in education, if you're a voter in Utah, or you just care about the United States and care about freedom. We are in this little bit of window of a time that we have for us all to get really clear on what's really happening here. We are going through a cultural revolution here in America. And should the leftist, Marxist, Maoist forces win, it never goes well for those societies. It's the communism kills more people than any other system of government, any other system. And so we really have to wake up. We have to be willing to be called bad names. I've been called racist more times by more people on social media who don't know me than I can even count. Never been called a racist by someone who actually knows me, but by people who don't know me. We have to be willing to be called names. We have to be willing to listen to a vicious narcissistic tantrum and just not react to it. And there's more of us here in Utah. There are more of us that care about freedom, that care about the Constitution, that don't look kindly upon communism than there are of the leftist activists. But are we going to wake up enough people in time? Cari, what would you say to voters who, are going to be voting for state school board members in this upcoming election? What would you say to these voters throughout Utah?
Well, the first thing I would say is stop listening to the Salt Lake Tribune. That's probably the very first thing is stop listening. Go to their own pages, read their own sources. What are they saying?
Of the
Do
candidate?
you agree for the candidates? Do you agree with that? Your children are they're on the front lines. This is a cultural revolution and they always come for the kids. Can I just show my little, okay, I don't know if it'll show with my green screen, but this right here is a book created in Utah.
Hold it up a little higher so we can see more of
Okay.
the, yeah.
So this is ethnic studies and it's created in Utah. Page after page after page is the fists up in the air and how your child can be part of a revolution. Now, remember what James said. He said that first they target those kids and they turn them into activists. But after they turn them into activists, then they become useless. And they become problematic because they have this energy of only looking for the worst, always looking for the problem, always wanting to destroy. Like I said, go look at Equality Utah. Go look at 4-1 Utah or Utah. I can't remember. Is it 1 Utah? I think it's 1 Utah. Go look at these organizations and look at how much hate is peddled out. Constant hate. Do you want that for your kid? There's some of us who are running who don't want that for your kid. We want to restore some joy. We want to restore reason. We want to restore analytical thinking, not critical thinking, because that's been co-opted. We want to restore a place where your kids can look at two different things and measure out the facts for themselves. That's what we need. We need to be able, and we also need kids who can sit and go, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, apologize for the mistake, and move on. We need that for our children. Because right now, what we're getting is a woman who's getting full-on death threats. And we justify that as kindness.
Tell me, what kind of power does the state school board have here in Utah to direct the education of Utah's entire base of children?
They set the policy. So legislature makes the laws, but the school board makes sure that it comes into code. They set that policy.
And how many state school board members are there? Is it 13? Or
No,
is it
I think I want to say 15.
15?
I believe it's
15 people have an extremely crucial role of what our children in our schools here will be learning, whether it's going to go further to the left, to the Marxist activist side, or if we can push it back more towards academics and towards the type of education that most of us as adults that we had when we were school children. There are people running. Cari Bartholomew is one of them. We have other candidates running throughout Utah who are aware of these Marxist agendas.
I just really encourage people to go look. Do not just trust that because the person goes to your ward, that they're the right person. A lot of people run and they feel like it's perfectly fine to lie about who they are or what they stand for, because they know that if they were honest, and said that they're a left-leaning Democrat, that they would not get elected. So they feel like it's fine to lie because it's the only way to make change. But I would question anyone who doesn't have the integrity to be who they say they are.
There's a guy running in, was it Alpine area, or is it, no, it's at Murray, who I watched one of his videos. It's the fakest of the fake, is this fake super nicey nice act. And then what has he done? He's like, he is pushing the Marxist queer Marxist, gender Marxist agenda in the schools to children. He gave an award to a teacher who read trans books to third graders in Murray. That teacher won an award, did not get censored, and he was the one who gave the award, is my understanding.
He also teaches that our children shouldn't know the difference between coming here legally and not. And those are just things that
That's
people need
one
to know.
direction. Yeah, that's one direction that our state school board, if we give in to this struggle session against Natalie Cline, that's a direction that it would more naturally go.
Right.
Or we can have a mass awakening of conservatives here in Utah to understand this is communism trying to take over, a communist cultural revolution, and we can push it back again in the direction for those of us who, I was a public school attendee in the 80s and early 90s, that was somewhat pretty decent educated, push it back towards that normal education of normal academics and of kids not being indoctrinated.
Focus on excellence.
Yeah,
Focus on excellence in the individual, and our country will thrive.
yeah, absolutely.
And that doesn't matter. I don't care if my student is gay. I
Right.
don't care if my student is lesbian or trans. I feel bad for trans kids.
Mhm.
But I don't have hatred for them,
No,
and
absolutely.
I definitely do not think that any child cannot succeed, any student cannot succeed based on the color of their skin or
Yeah.
their gender. If you have a child that's falling behind, then you help them as an individual, but you don't use school as a platform for your ideological destruction of our country.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, it's a crucial time here. I'm just a resident of Utah who's happened to live in Russia and happened to have studied communism and gotten pretty deep into studying what's going on. Otherwise, I'm just some random person. I am a mom of a young child. I happen to homeschool my child, but I still care about what's going on here with the rest of Utah's school children, even though my child is not in the public schools anymore. This is a really big deal who we elect for our school board, and giving in to the struggle session against Natalie Cline would not be good for anyone. And I support Natalie. And I support you, Cari. Wish I could vote for you.
It's
Don't live
okay.
in your district. I will be doing my education on the candidates that are running in my district here in Washington County, Utah. Um, the governor's race is a whole other can of worms. I encourage people, again, and I said this at my film premiere for Beneath Sheep's Clothing, and you mentioned it, and I'm going to say it again. Whatever office anyone is running for anywhere, whether it's some little city position, whether it's county school board, whether it's a state legislature, do not vote for anyone unless they understand what this communist cultural revolution is and what it's doing to us. And they're not, if they're not explicitly willing to say, I am going to push back against this, we're going to go back to normalcy, we're going to go back to judging people on the content of their character, we're going to go back to a constitutional framework, not this Marxist garbage. Don't vote for anyone unless they are willing to explicitly say that, no matter if they're a Republican, no matter if you're related to them somehow, no matter if you heard, they did something nice in your community, they organized some community charity, and that's really nice, that feels really good, so sure, I'll vote for that person. Please, we're at a very, very crucial time here. Any last words, Cari?
Yeah, I will just tell you that I was at a doctor's appointment probably a year ago, and I was talking to the receptionist because I talk, and the receptionist said, I was in California, and they laughed, and I said I was from Utah, and they laughed, and they said, well, you're next. You're next, because if Utah, if family friendly American pride Utah falls, then any place is susceptible. And so a lot of energy is here towards bringing down Utah.
And
And
there's people in this fight that don't even live here. I've dealt with some of these operatives online. They're Marxist operatives that don't even live, that are doing major activism work, leftist, communist activism work on social media.
Yeah.
They really want to take Utah down.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's Marx hates God.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. Marx hates God, and Utah at one point took a stand for God.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cari. And we already said thanks to James. You guys can actually see me and Cari both in the film Beneath Sheep's Clothing, coming out later this spring, beneathsheepsclothing.movie. Cari, what's your website where people can go and look at what else you do?
Sure. It's Carob Marcelle, Be Not Afraid. So yeah, on YouTube.
Yeah, Cari's interviewed quite a lot of people and been interviewed lots of places. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.